familiar with needing to check a box to tell a census or a test what race they are before they begin. For many people, this is a more difficult task than it is for others. What race are your parents? If two different races, which one do you choose? For example, a little girl whose mother is Hispanic and father is Middle Eastern, does she identify more with one than the other? Or does she identify with another race completely altogether? 2.7% of Americans consider themselves two or more races based off of the United States Census in 2018. The population was reported about 327 million, which puts about 9 million people in the conundrum of deciphering what they should label themselves with. This young girl we spoke of may identify more closely with her Middle Eastern side because she grew up in a predominantly Middle Eastern community, but she's consistently confused as Puerto Rican rather than her true race. There really is no such thing as true race, because race itself is a social classification that we created in the past before globalization and multicultural reproduction was common or accepted. The textbook definition of race is the taxonomic category of subspecies. This was seen in the Essence of Anthropology 4th edition. The definition continues on to explain how this may be the biological understanding, but for humans it doesn't apply because separating humans into these categories has no rhyme or reason amongst biology. Biologically, we do have small genes that affect the color of our skin that deal with our melanin or the coloring in our skin that differ us from each other. But these are not uniform amongst all races due to our globalization and other factors. Many people don't even identify with their race anymore. They rather identify with their nationality or ethnicity, which is becoming super popular. Looking into history, we see studies by Renato Biasutti, published in 1941, who labeled each race off of a tile method, comparing skin colors to types of tile and notating across the globe. As Nina Jablonski, professor of anthropology, stated, this was a remarkable early compilation of skin color distribution upon which all subsequent research has been based, in the documentary Skin Deep, Nina Jablonski's Theory of Race. For early anthropologists, this was vital into being able to learn the human origin and migration of human beings based off of skin color. But this classification that Biasutti discovered remains prevalent today in illogical ways, such as describing a man from the Caribbean as African American, as the Caribbean is miles and miles away from Africa. This may want us to go further and deeper than just skin deep. Each of us have melanin that creates the lightness or darkness in our skin, and even the hues behind it, explained by MedicineNet. The melanin or vitamin D is based on the diet of the people as well as the environment that they live in. For example, Native Africans are leaner to let the heat release out of their skin, and they have darker skin that helps release the heat from their bodies as well. They also eat mostly herbs and small portion of meat, which contains lower vitamin D because they're born with a higher rate of vitamin D in their bodies. Inuit people, though, are shorter and have pale skin to keep the heat in. They originally survived on blubber and meat of seals, which is extremely vitamin D rich, which supplements the lack of sun exposure in the icy plains. This evolution took thousands of years to evolve, and there's no chance of any evolution in the next 100 based off of our globalization and multiculturalism. Now that people are not residing in their ancestry's home, to classify by race is confusing and meaningless as there's no origin or backbone to support the claim of this Middle Eastern girl being called Middle Eastern when she was born and raised in New York City. Besides the mutation of skin color, biological similarity within race is no more similar than the biology of any other race. Although there are specific illnesses or gene mutations that are more common within specific nationalities or ethnicities, we do not see the entire Hispanic population, for example, taking on a specific trait or advantage in any way. Therefore, no race could be derived from the genetic mutations. Although white skin began as genetic mutation, we classified it as a race. So when we classify others and ourselves as a specific race, we're using only visual cues. But how would this work with an African albino? Because their skin is white, would we classify them as white, even though both of their parents were considered black? All different cultures and peoples have moved all across the globe. Colonization and government law moves tribes or families from their home of hundreds, if not thousands, of years to another location. We're now solely basing our identity off of race on visual indicators, which do not tell the whole story, and if we look even deeper, there's no story to tell. Many people, due to globalization, no longer even identify with their race, but rather their nationality, as explaining their race becomes confusing to try and mix all of their races together. Here's a short clip to exemplify our visual racial indicators and our racial classification and how it's dying in our society.
I don't know, I guess I'd describe myself as black.
French.
English, Scottish, Russian, Panamanian, Portuguese, so, can I say?
She can't. As you can see by this video, the first man considered himself as white, or he considered himself as black, even though he was visually white. The second woman didn't even mention many races. She mostly mentioned ethnicities and nationalities because that's what she identified with. Some may argue you can't just identify with a culture and become a part of it, but that's not true. If you identify with a church or temple, you become baptized and become a part of it, and as many know, religion is a pivotal point in culture. If you identify with a language or symbol, you learn or adopt it. Culture would not continue to exist today if it was not adopted, and ethnicity is the offspring of culture. Race categorizing is not necessary in our world today, as it is not a vital part of our identity and society any longer. It is each of us that makes up the society, and it is up to each of you to start a trend of no longer using these dated classifications within our society. Thank you.
Good.